In the last video, we talked about adding values to OneForm to initialize values. You can also initialize errors, or you can handle errors outside of OneForm. Now, OneForm does handle validation and does have error handling internally. And internally, you're saying, does it magic? Like, how does it know what to error on and whatever? No, you tell it what to do it, but you statically tell it what to do it. If for some reason, and it's not when you have dynamic fields or anything, but if for some reason you want to do errors yourself, which there are some rare cases where you would, the only one that I can think of is that you have an API. And the API, like your client-side stuff says, yeah, this is good to go. But the API returns back and says, no, this is not good to go. That's where you want to use this errors prop. And so nothing has changed in our form. But what we can do is pass in errors. Now, if you watch the other video where we talked about memoization, you also want this errors prop to be memoized. It's very important for it to be memoized. So I'm going to remove some of the clutter here so you can just focus on the OneForm. Errors, I'm going to put them somewhere else. And the reason I'm going to put them somewhere else is to show you that they're memoized. Or at least that they're never created a second time. This is a static object now. There we go. And we can say, oops, there was an error on the email field, and you, the viewer, forgot the @ sign. Right? It could be the viewer, could be anybody. I don't care. It's whoever put their email incorrectly in the form. Oops, you forgot the @ sign. This came from the server because for some reason our client side, oh, we have no client side validation. See, we didn't put any validations on this form. Basically, we submitted this form at some point and we're sending this back to the user and saying, hey, you forgot the @ sign. You're passing those errors into OneForm. Now you're wondering how they're handled. The field can handle it. It does get errors and it does pass them to the input, but this input doesn't handle errors. If your inputs handle errors, you're good. If they don't handle errors, you'll need something like this. OneForm dot field error or error. I don't know exactly how I'm going to name it. I don't know if I want it to be error or field error. Most likely I want it to be field error. And it will be self-closing. You could create your own with a hook. There'll be a use field error hook. We'll get to that. Right now it's this, and you put the field name in it that you want it to error. In this case, email. So this will error. This will show the error message for the email field when they're passed in here, or when you have validation and the validation responds with a message. Whatever that message is will display here as well. That's pretty easy, right? Now let's talk about that hook I was saying. There will be hooks and there will be an error message. I don't know what else comes in this hook yet. I haven't thought about it in a long time, but use field error like this. You will call something like this. You'll pass it a name and the name would be email. And we can create a component that does this. It doesn't have to necessarily be there. We could also call it up here. And you're like, no, you can't do that. There's no way you could call use field error because the context is defined here and we are outside of the context. How would you have access to it? There are ways of making it work. The only way I can think to make it work though is that you would have to have some kind of ID on your form or a name on the form. You have to have something to define the form. And then over here, you would have to have a form ID. I think ID probably makes sense. Let's say the ID is Phil and the form ID then here is Phil. And then if you do that, then you can get access to the error for the email error for this form up here. Isn't that going to be cool? Now, I don't know if it's just going to be error message. It might be like other stuff. Right? I have no clue exactly what I'm going to put here, but I'm pretty sure it's just an error. Oh, error messages. Yeah, and let me be very, very clear. It's error messages. It will give you an array of errors because you might want to display them all and you might want to reformat them how they display, but there will be multiple error messages sometimes. This errors object, I told you it wrong. I was trying to make it easy, but it's actually wrong. It looks like this. It looks like that. It's like, what? Why would you do that? Because you might have multiple. It's like, why would you have multiple? Internally in your validations, you might have multiple validations for different fields. We'll get to that. I don't want to go too detailed into that, but you can have multiple errors per field, different errors that you want your user to handle differently. You don't want to say you forgot the @ sign, but we know internally, like you also forgot to put a .com or something that's valid. We could also add that here. You forgot you can only use like .edu. That's something. We can put both of these messages here and give them in this field error would get both of them, or actually it depends on how I want to set it up this time, but I had it only display the one. I would actually display all of them if I was doing it today. And right now it's just text and stuff. There'd have to be some way to style this that I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this particular thing. because when I did this before, we had a set styling that we wanted. I just used the styling that we needed from our component library. And here, we'll have to create that ourselves. We would create a component that listens to use field error. And then it could take like I don't know, it could take the form ID. It doesn't have to. It would most likely be in and then it would take, you'd also put the name in there. You can create this component yourself, but it'd be like my field error or my company's field error, which in this case is called the example. This is example field error, but you can have this API. I would recommend keeping it the same as your field names. If it's name here, then it'll be name here. That's very simple. You can create this and you can style it however you want, and it will display the field error that you get back from here or the error messages. You can make it one error message. You can make it multiple. The way I had it before is it only had one error message, but this one always returns all of them. You can handle that however you want. Hopefully that's like a cool way to use errors and a little bit of a sneak peek into an idea I have, which this actually had. I've created it before, but not for the implementation I did initially when I created this. The ID thing is brand new, but it's a sneak peek at something I'm coming up with. You can get it up here. How does that look? Cool. You can put errors here. Now this will also have errors. If you do have a custom component here that can take error messages, then it will get error messages. It's pretty cool. That's the errors. I don't think there's anything I'm forgetting. If we also want to error on name, you will also pass an array here of strings. So you forgot your name. What? Should be a question mark. There we go. You can do that too. Now the thing is, here's an important thing to note. I did forget about something. If you pass errors here, just like with values, it will wipe all the errors that were shown. If you have form validation, it's not going to merge the errors. And there's a reason for that. And I'm definitely thinking, based on the notes I took, that I want to be able to merge errors together. But you wouldn't merge errors by passing a prop error. You're going to have to take some kind of ref or something like this. It won't be a ref. It'll be like a form reference, form library reference, OneForm reference, something like that. And you'll pass a ref into it. You can still pass a ref here, but you'll get a OneForm reference. I would probably just call this OneForm ref. And from here, I might give you the ability to, outside of it, merge errors in or merge values in if you want to do something really weird. But typically, you won't need to do any of this. You really most likely won't need to do any of this. But I'm thinking of putting something like this in right now. All this videos is like me thinking about it at this point, because once I start coding it, we'll get to that, because I have to divide up all the work and figure out how I'm going to make it into separate videos so that it'll be obvious to people, and we're going to unit test it and make it look really good. Is that it? I think that's it. Don't worry about that. So basically, if you pass errors in here, it will override everything, and those will be the errors, because most likely those are the errors. If you were able to submit the form and your API came back, most likely there would be no errors in the form. When you pass this in, it's not going to be a big deal. Okay, that's it.